We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into no scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research, which has found that air pollution has decreased across the US, but that health burdens remain unequal amongst racial groups. Smog spectre looms, choking the throats of the innocent, charcoal fingers clutching at fragile hearts. The fumes of progress do not discriminate, and yet they weigh heavier on some. Gasping for breath, the afflicted cry out, their wheezing laments suffocated in the haze. Poisonous clouds begin to shift, their ashen grasp slowly released, yet many remain, trapped in a tainted embrace. How long must they wait? This poem is inspired by recent research published in the journal Nature Human Behaviour, which has found that particle air pollution poses a far greater cardiovascular disease for Black Americans than white, despite recent reductions. Air pollution is a major health concern worldwide. One dangerous type of air pollution is fine particulate matter, or PM2.5. These tiny particles can get deep into the lungs and cause heart and breathing problems. Research shows PM2.5 pollution has gone down in the US recently, but it's unclear if this improvement has benefited all racial and ethnic groups equally. In this new study, researchers looked at how lower PM2.5 pollution affected risk of death from cardiovascular disease in different US racial and ethnic groups. It analysed data across over 3,000 US counties from 2001 to 2016. The results show PM2.5 pollution is linked to a much higher risk of cardiovascular disease for Black people compared to white people. There was no significant difference found between Hispanic and white people. Even though the gap in risk between Black and white people has reduced over the 15 years studied, in 2016 the death rate from PM2.5 was still over 3 times higher for Black people compared to white people. This research shows how racial minorities remain disproportionately vulnerable to the health impacts of air pollution, whilst also highlighting how action is needed to reduce both PM2.5 exposure and vulnerability in minority communities. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. Smog spectre looms, choking the throats of the innocent, charcoal fingers clutching at fragile hearts. The fumes of progress do not discriminate, and yet they weigh heavier on some. Gasping for breath, the afflicted cry out, their wheezing laments suffocated in the haze. Poisonous clouds begin to shift, their ashen grasp slowly released, yet many remain, trapped in a tainted embrace. How long must they wait? In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Hiking by Abigail Vender. Abigail Vender is a poet and translator who holds degrees from the MFA Programme for Writers at Warren Wilson College and the New School for Social Research. Her debut poetry collection, Reliquary, was published in 2021, and her writing and translations have appeared in Asphaltote, The Cortland Review, Disquieting Muses Quarterly, Epiphany, New Orleans Review, Swim, and Kenyon Review Online. Vender serves as President of Friends of Writers and Vice President of the Poetry Society of America. Hiking by Abigail Vender. I try to understand why countless unnamed pollutants poison our air. Millions of dollars were spent marketing opiates, getting the swing with OxyContin. The mountain path ends in rock. Hiking, I break my walking stick, it's replaceable. There's a silence that's like unspoken complaints, two minds not making amends. At the meadow's edge, a scarlet tanager alights on a white pine. Are the words for us, America, high on an uppermost branch. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme Show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.